So finally, we're going to get into the actual hacking part. I know you're impatient. No, I'm just kidding. I know you're eager. And that's a good thing. So you've got the idea of web and web applications and the interconnectivity and all that. The specifications and how all the standards work and what they actually mean to us. So now it's time to start practicing real hacking in the lab. Now, following a methodology like the OWASP testing guide is really useful. And for the most part in these guides, you will see testing procedures that are divided into different stages, such as reconnaissance, exploitation, and reporting. So here, when I was creating a course, I pretty much did the same and divided the web penetration testing procedures into 7 different stages, and these are mostly acceptable in the field. You can start from wherever you want to. I don't want to force you, but to me, I really do advise you to follow along sequentially every part and then perform all of the different steps. Because you have to remember, your aim is to identify as many bugs as you can as a penetration tester. So that way you can cover every aspect of the application. No stone unturned, so to speak. So let's get started with information gathering. Reconnaissance and discovery. So information gathering or reconnaissance or discovery, it all means the same thing to us. It's, to me, the crucial stage of pen testing. So allow me to identify this phase like this. It's a phase in which we will extract information regarding the target that we're attempting to hack. And then this information can be anything directly or indirectly about the target application or the customer. Remember the video about attack surfaces? When doing a web pen test, we need to explore all the possibilities of breaking into the web application. That's why we need to know about the application, database, server, as well as the users. So the more information we gather about the target, the more options we will have while we're testing. Now, to be more specific, this phase includes identifying the IP addresses, subdomains, and related information, accumulating information about the target website from publicly available resources, such as Google, Bing, Yahoo, archive.org, and Shodan, identifying people related to the target with the help of social networking sites, such as Facebook or Twitter, spidering the web application, and creating sitemaps to understand the flow of the application. You really should consider any information gathered at this stage important, because even a small bit of information that looks like it could be nothing may help you exploit in the later stages of the test. The success of the penetration test depends on the quality of the information gathered in this stage. Cool? Domain host related info. So the conducted web penetration tests are generally close to black box testing, as we mentioned before. So we don't have, well, hardly any information about the target, if any. Maybe just a URL, IP address, or a domain name is given to us. So to start testing and gathering information, we'll need to dig around an URL, IP, or a domain name. No problem. So in this section, we're going to first extract domain registration information by using the Whois service. Then we're going to use the extracted information to get subdomains of the target and even the other hosts in the network. And then, if it's possible, we're going to discover the applications that are served on the same server or same service. All right, so let's start with the Whois service. When registering a domain, the domain owner needs to provide his personal information to the domain registrar, such as name, phone number, other contact information. And all this is public information due to the nature of the Whois service. So that means that you can view the name, address, phone number, and email address of the person or entity who registered the domain. If you query the registrar Whois service, you can get this information. But sometimes the registrars can hide this if they have a service to change the owner information with theirs. Whois records and holds the registration details provided by the domain owner to the domain registrar. Yes, I say Whois. Whois is a protocol that works on port TCP/43, and there are multiple Whois servers on the Internet around the world. These servers are operated by regional Internet registrars, so they are used to extract information about the domains and the associated contacts information. Okay, so open your terminal in Kali, and thanks to our developers, Kali has a Whois client, and it's very easy to use. Okay, so type Whois to see the help file, and we're going to use that. So let's think of google.com as your target domain. And you got to wonder about Google's registration info, right? So type Whois google.com and hit enter. Okay, so this is the output for this domain. It's long. So scroll up. And as you're seeing this with me, the registrar for this domain is Mark Monitor. The dates of validity period are also displayed. The output of a Whois query also points out the DNS servers for google.com. And those will help us to find additional hosts in the domain. So now I will run another Whois query. But first, let me get the google.com IP address, hostgoogle.com. And the host command performs a reverse IP check. So when you give the domain, it returns the corresponding IP address. So type whois-hwis.erin.net. Now I will copy this IP address. With the H parameter, you can point to a specific Whois server to query. So hit enter. And again, you get a long output. But it's got a lot of information, such as network range, phone number, and address. So Whois queries are very handy to originate a domain name. There are also online Whois services, and you've probably had a look at them. You may want to look at them again. Now, once we get the authoritative DNS server address by using Whois, we can identify any additional hosts in the domain, such as FTP server, mail server, and so on. If there are any other services in this domain, we can also extract information from them. Now, another way to discover subdomains and the host is to query search engines, and then you can compare the results. Okay, so here you might be confused about host and subdomain, so let me give you a quick explanation. If you think of the address x.example.com, now x is the subdomain of example.com. And x.example.com can be a host if it is connected to an IP address and resolves to a computer when one goes to x.example.com. Cool? So anyway, there are multiple ways to extract additional host and subdomain information. So that means there's lots of tools out there for us to use on this purpose. And I'm going to use two tools that are already present in Kali, Fierce and TheHarvester. Now, Fierce is a really cool tool. Besides that, it uses brute force methods to get subdomains. Also, after it finds a valid host, then it performs a reverse lookup to uncover additional hosts. And here are the options for Fierce. Okay, so first we're going to run a basic scan. So type fierce-dns google.com/file/root/desktop/googleinfo.txt and hit enter. So the DNS parameter specifies the domain that you want to scan. So in our example, it is google.com. By default, Fierce runs in single thread mode. So because of this, I can add the threads parameter to increase the speed. So that makes the scan run faster. And then the file parameter helps us to save the results to a file. And now while scanning the hosts or subdomains, what happens in the background? So Fierce first tries to find the DNS servers for the target domain. And next, as I'm showing you on the screen, it attempts to do a zone transfer. Now at this point, if a zone transfer is successful, Fierce will stop running. And then you can take that information that you got from the zone transfer. Now, if zone transfer fails, as it has in our scan, it checks if wildcard DNS is enabled. And then it performs a brute force against the domain using its built-in word list. Okay, so now the scan is complete. And as you can see, once the scan is finished, the found subdomains and discovered subnets are listed. We can also view and save the file, but the content is not that different. In fact, it's not different at all from the output on our screen. It just makes it convenient. And by default, Fierce uses its own built-in word list. But it also provides the ability to use a custom word list that you can build. And sometimes different word lists can uncover new subdomains. So the second tool is the Harvester. It is another subdomain scanner, and it gathers public information such as employee names, emails, subdomains, banners, and other similar information. But for now, we're just going to deal with subdomains and host. And type the Harvester, and you'll see options. Now, it's quite easy to use this tool, so let's just run it quickly. Type the Harvester-D and the domain that you want to search. So in my case, of course, it's google.com. It might be strange because I will be using Bing to search for google.com. But by using the B parameter, you can provide a data source. L parameter limits the search output. So the Harvester will analyze the first 500 search results of Bing about google.com. And finally, the F parameter helps us to save the result to a file. Okay, so hit Enter to run. And first, the search is conducted. Then it will analyze the result. Okay, so here's what we expected to see. So now, go to the saved file directory. I'm going to go to the desktop, and here's a file. So let's have a look. So it's not very different from the output that's on the screen, but at least we can have smaller graphics. Great, so you can run these tools, or some other ones if you wish, for your target. You can go ahead and practice that. Now let's have a look at applications on the same service. So this is not just all about the target domain, because in general, while we're conducting a penetration test, we say the URL to the address of the web application. And especially in an intranet network, it's quite often to see unusual URL addresses. In the port and service detection part, I'm going to show you a couple of things. But sometimes you will see just an HTTP service on a port with different applications. And URLs may be in the form of http://domain.com/app1, app2, etc. So in a situation like that, you'll need to detect these applications to get extra information about your target. There's really no tool to use in a situation like that, so you will have to manually discover these kinds of applications. Ports and services on the web server. Web applications are generally served on ports 80 and 443, but it's not limited to use just these port numbers. Port numbers are configurable, so it's not uncommon to see a web application served on a non-standard port such as 8080. Okay, so basically a URL or an IP address will be provided to you if you start a penetration test. But sometimes, due to your contract, you may need to run a black box testing approach with nothing. You wouldn't even have an IP or a URL to get to test. In both of these scenarios, you would need to identify and then map the target network in some level. So the first thing to do is to identify the target network with Whois. So we've already done that. The second thing to do is to map the network. And that's what we're going to do now. And we will use Kali Linux. It's got a great tool in there to help us out. Nmap. So Nmap is short for Network Mapper. It's a powerful open-source network scanning tool, perfect for conducting reconnaissance and enumeration. So here we are going to benefit from Nmap. So now open up your terminal in Kali and type Nmap. You can see there are a few options. Nmap can perform many tasks. It can identify live hosts, scan TCP and UDP open ports, detect firewalls, get service version running in remote hosts, and even with the use of scripts, find and exploit vulnerabilities. So why don't we just start with a basic scan? So at this point, let's assume I was given or I have found the target IP or URL. So I'm going to use bbox IP address in the examples. Simply type nmap 192.168.204.130 and hit enter. And here's a basic scan. So Nmap will scan the target IP with its default options. And the result shows the open ports and corresponding service names running on these ports. So now let's touch on some of these other parameters to perform a detailed scan. Now, Nmap has several approaches for scanning open ports. It sends raw network packets to several TCP or UDP ports of the target and checks to see if there's a response. And if there is, depending on the type of response, it will define the port as to whether it's open or not. And remembering that HTTP uses TCP for transmitting packets, Nmap will play with these packets, and then different scan types come up. So a regular TCP connection between two IPs is called a three-way handshake. So first, a sign flag reaches the destination, and then it sends the sign ACK flags back to the source. Then the source sends back the ACK flag to start the data transmission. So this is the basic and fully qualified TCP connection, right? So type nmap 192.168.204.130-SS, and the SS parameter will do the sign scan on the target. So that means that Nmap will not complete the three-way handshake. It's not going to replace the last sign packet with a reset packet. But the result is not going to be different than the first one, because the sign scan is the default option for Nmap. Now, type Nmap 192.168.204.130 ST, and this is a TCP scan if the ST parameter is used. So that means Nmap completes the three-way handshake. And that way Nmap can actually connect to the target port. And then the connection is logged by the server. And the result is the same as the previous one, but it provides a more accurate state of the port. Okay, so you can see that Nmap's a really clever tool. It first identifies the live host on the target network and then scans the host for open ports. So now let's type Nmap 192.168.204.130 SN. And with the flag SN, you can force Nmap to check to see if the host is alive or not. And then, of course, the opposite is also possible. Change SN to PN. And then this time, Nmap will not check to see if the host is live or not. It will only perform a port scan. Okay, so now let's be a little bit more specific about these ports. So you can use the P flag to define a port number, port list, or port range for Nmap to scan. So here I'm going to give it port 80 and 443. And of course, you can provide service names like HTTP or HTTPS. This time it will find ports running these services. So if you want to scan all the ports, just put a dash after the P. It's going to take a lot longer. But if you're not looking for a specific port, you can limit the number of ports by using top ports as a parameter. It will look for Nmap's top 100 ports. Now, if you only want the open ports, just add the open parameter. The closed port is gone. Also, you can add a reason parameter to display the reason a port is in its particular state. So until now, we've got open ports and the names of the services, right? So thankfully, Nmap can show the software versions running on the open ports. And just add the parameter SV to detect versions. And it might take a little while to run this kind of scan. And here are the results with their version banners. So now you can look for these version numbers to see if they have vulnerabilities or not. And then the last thing that we'll do here is determining the operating system running on the target host. So just add the parameter O to the previous command. And this could also take a little more time. Nmap will analyze the information collected from the open ports and versions and guess the probable OS. You can also use Nmap scripts. And also you can compose your own script by using the Nmap scripting engine. So here are some script names that you can use to help you when you're doing penetration tests. I won't show you how to use them, but simply because I'm going to be using some other tools and techniques for the same purpose. Using scripts is certainly not complicated, and I do advise you to use them. Review technology and architecture information. Now, as we talked about previously, the technology stack behind an application can vary widely. So what that means is in the real world, it's very common to see complex applications everywhere you turn. Different technologies, different vendors, different versions, and so on and so forth. So naturally, these technologies can have vulnerabilities or configuration, well, shall we say, shortcomings. So in order to discover these vulnerabilities, extracting the technology information is A1 priority. It's absolutely critical for your career as a pen tester. So that's why we need to detect the type and the version of the server software and the application framework or application platform. This information will help you to shape the payloads that you're going to use and deploy. And it will also bring you the awareness that you need to have about known vulnerabilities, if the framework has any as well, because that's part of your research. So I think that you detect a jQuery library or an old server version which has some insecure functions or vulnerabilities. Yes? What a coincidence, because it just happens to be perfect in order to compromise the application we're about to do. So first, open up your terminal in Kali, and we are going to use whatweb to get some information. So see the options for the tool, and then before using the tool, I want to just tell you a few more things. So it's not hard to detect the server and the framework information, right? You can get this information from the HTTP headers, the cookies, error messages, whatever. So the first place to look is the HTTP response headers. So type whatweb-a3 http://192.168.204.130/bwap/. So parameter A determines the aggression level of the tool. And then the target URL comes up, and whatweb will analyze some HTTP headers for you. It has a very colorful output, and the tool also follows the redirections. So that's a very good feature. And here you can see the server header for the server software information, and the application framework and platform information from the X-Powered by header. Now, there may be some other HTTP headers specific to some particular technology, so you always need to look out for the headers. Okay, so now I'm going to just minimize the terminal. Now you can also view headers manually in burp. So open up your browser and burp, and enable Foxy Proxy to send traffic to burp. Now request the login page of bwap. I'm going to forward the request. And here are the headers. Server and X-Powered by headers. So you see, it's very easy. However, these headers are configurable. So that means the administrator can easily change these entries from the configuration of the server and application. Or even some security products can do this. That's why you need to dig into the application and the environment to gain more clues about the server, framework, and the platform. So let's say, for example, different web server software can have different HTTP header orders. And then these servers can behave in a different way if you send some malformed requests. Also, you can look at HTTP headers, cookies, HTML sources, file types, and extensions. And the error messages are a great way to detect things as well. Extracting directory structure, crawling. So mapping the application layout and its structure is another very important task. Although there are some single-page applications, the applications you will test can generally consist of multiple web pages. And by multiple, I mean a lot. And these pages can be independent, or they can be linked to one another. There's actually no magic to get the structure, unless you're the actual developer of the application. And that it's just hours and hours of work. So, the best way to extract the structure of the application is to visit every page and click every link and fill every form. Then, observe all the URLs. So you can manually walk through the application and identify web pages from authenticated and unauthenticated users' perspective. So this whole process is called crawling or spidering the application? Now, you might think, and you would be right, that it's not really possible to do everything manually. This really is a time-consuming process. So, gosh darn it, wouldn't you just love it if somebody created a tool for crawling? And how about some scripts for good measure? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because now let's go over to Kali and open up your browser and burp. I know, if you were raised like me, it's rude, but I'm going to ask you to do it again. Open your browser and burp. Okay, so, sorry. Go to Dashboard and make sure that capturing is active. Then disable master interception from this button. Okay, so see, it's off. But in your browser, redirect the traffic to burp by enabling Foxy Proxy. So now burp will passively intercept all traffic coming from Firefox. Then what we're going to do here is visit pages and click links. See, so that way, burp will create a structure of the application from the clicked URLs by intercepting passively. Right? So I'm going to click on some links here on the page and then log in. Open up a few other pages and okay, that's enough to show you. So, okay, look at the history in burp. So all the requests are here. And, okay, so the aim here is to see a sort of a broad overview of the application layout. So there are a few more things in the step to perform, but I want you to just have a look here. I'm sure that you've heard about robots.txt. I know almost every website uses this file to allow or disallow directories to be crawled by bots. So robots.txt is a file that uses a specification protocol called Robots Exclusion Protocol. Now, it's not really something that you need to consider, but you might want to have a look at it later. But yeah, displaying this file is very handy if you want to see the sensitive pages and directories easily. So what am I saying? Yeah, go to the robots.txt file of BWAP. And here are some directories that are not allowed. So I'm going to visit each of them. Admin directory, documents, and images. And then, wait, what's this? Passwords directory. Now go to burp, click Target tab, click Sitemap. On the left pane, you can see the site structure. And also, there are filter options above. You know, this is great. I hope you get excited as I do. So by clicking Show All, resources like CSS and images, they're all going to show up on the map as well. Now, I think the commercial version of burp will do this task automatically, but I really do want you to, get your hands dirty, as I was saying before. I know it's not the most efficient way, but this is how you learn. So we need something a bit more intrusive now, I should think. So Kali Linux has a number of tools for this job. Dirbuster is one of them. So open up the terminal and simply type dirbuster, and the GUI will come up. Dirbuster is the directory brute forcer for web applications. So now let's provide the target URL, which is http://192.168.204.130/bwap/. And here's a starting point for Dirbuster. And it will automate the tedious tasks of cataloging the pages within the application. That sounds good, huh? So it works by requesting a web page, parsing through it for links, and then sending requests to these new links until all the web pages are mapped. So then let's increase the number of threads here to 20, and then choose a list, browse. Now there are several lists in DIRBuster directory under word lists. And I'm going to choose the medium directory list. Okay, and click Start. Oh, and another good thing is to identify administrative and test pages. These pages can contain sensitive information and provide entry points to perform attacks, such as a brute force attack. It is also possible to see old and backup files in the directory structure. Don't laugh. I've seen it many times in real-world situations. So, if the old version of the application functions and has any vulnerabilities, bingo, you can own the entire system. Besides that, the folders and files belong to the application, so there may be metafiles and folders of the server software as well as the application framework. And I mean known files and folders such as PHP, MyAdmin, and so forth. So DIRBuster also looks for this kind of stuff. And here, as you can see, it detects Drupal, PHP, MyAdmin, and SQLite. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop the scan, and you can take a report. Full text report. Browse for the location to save, and give it the name. I'm just going to type BWAP and generate report. So now you can go to that folder, and here's the report we saved. So now you can analyze it. Minimum information principle. So let me tell you, there's an interesting belief out there in the development community that they explain everything about the application in detail. Now, it's not necessarily bad, but sometimes this really good behavior goes beyond its good intention. And that means that it provides some important information for a pen tester. So this kind of information sometimes can help us in, well, particularly vital situations. There may be different ways to get this kind of information, but I want to give you a few tips. So the first thing is to read just about all the HTML source files, or at least write your own script to investigate the sources for certain special tags and words. You can find an HTML comment that contains any information about the back end of the application, such as passwords, usernames. That's golden. Also look through the help pages. Use the demo users if the application has one. Now, once I test an application, I can see an unauthenticated help document, which contains an administrative demo user. So it's these types of errors that are, well, decreasing constantly because companies are moving faster and faster to better deployment and better development environments. But that doesn't mean they're not out there. Also, there may be some error and warning directives that are helpful to the general users, such as your password is wrong. See, but for a pen tester, this means brute force a password because you've already got some usernames, right? And sometimes errors are caused in the back end, and those can be directly reflected to the user. And again, for a general user, it doesn't have any meaning. But the hacker or a pen tester is not the same as a general user. And now one last thing that I want to mention to you. Sometimes we can observe all the information about all the employees on the website of the company. Seriously, all board members, employees, their phone numbers, names, emails, even way more info than that. And I'm not telling you that that's a vulnerability or you've got to hide this information, but I really think that it shouldn't be that easy to find. Anyway, it really does help for the social engineering purposes. So in the previous video, we talked about crawlers, but don't forget, search engines are the best crawlers. They work almost exactly as we want them to, and they have a huge amount of data about the publicly exposed web applications. See, when a search engine bot crawls a web application, it indexes the pages according to some rules that are associated to the page and its content. They can index almost anything within a website, including sensitive information. So they have a complex working style, and they always update the way they crawl. But at the end of the day, they provide us with so much good information from everything, from error messages to vulnerable files and servers. Okay, so now go to Kali and open up your browser. And for the majority of our generation, Google is one of the first search engines that comes to mind. But it is by no means alone. There are several other search engines, such as Bing and Yandex and Yahoo, and of course, anybody could go on. But we are going to conduct the Google queries to get more. So for the average person, Google is just a search engine used to find text, images, videos. It's even a spell checker for some. However, for pen testers, Google is a very useful hacking tool. So go ahead, type google.com, and you can run Google search queries from this interface. But besides this simple interface, Google has an advanced search functionality. So go to Settings and click on Advanced Search, and you can use this page for more detailed queries. Also, Google Search Engine has its own built-in query language, and I'll give you a list of these search operators. So you can also use these search operators to get detailed results. So in order to benefit from Google more, using these operators can come in quite handily. So let's run some searches with some of these advanced operators, okay? So let's find New York Times subdomains. Type site:/nytimes.com -site:/www.nytimes.com. So the site command will bring the results that contain only nytimes.com. And the dash before the second site will exclude the results that contain www.nytimes.com. Okay? So look at the number of results. Now, if you add and in URL:/login, it will bring us the results that contain login pages. But be careful. Google doesn't necessarily want us using the advanced search for our purposes. Google will start blocking your connection if you connect from a single static IP. Okay, so it will ask for CAPTCHA challenges to prevent automated queries. So I'm going to fill in this CAPTCHA box. It's always a favorite thing to do. Now look at the number of results. It decreases a lot. Now add or in URL:/signup to bring sign-up pages. So this time the number of results are increased. So you can also look for a vulnerable version of any of the web technologies. So type in URL:/phpMyAdmin/index.php and in title:/phpMyAdmin 2.11. And look at the results. It's going to bring up all of the pages that are version 2.11 of phpMyAdmin. So also we can perform the same search for SQLite Manager. Just type in title:/SQLite Manager in URL:/SQLite/in-text:/welcome-to. And look at that. Here are the SQLite Manager pages. Now, there are a few pages listed, but Google does not only index the HTTP-based servers, it also indexes OpenFTP servers. So if you type in title, index of, in URL, FTP, open FTP servers will be listed. Now, I know you might say, this is not enough. Well, you can go with the prepared queries that are performed by the hacking community. Why didn't I say that before? Because these queries are stored in the Google hacking database. Bet you didn't know it existed. Now you do. So open this page. GHDB is also served by offensive security. So here, every query is called Google Dork. So you can apply any dork to your target application and server. Just click on any dork. And from here, just click to see the Google search results. And now you can analyze the results. So imagine that a Drupal vulnerability is announced. You can create a Google query to identify the servers or applications that have this vulnerability. Or you can check Google Hacking Database to find it and use it. So now the world is up to your imagination and you.
Shodan is a search engine for Internet-connected devices. Shodan gathers information about all devices directly connected to the Internet. If a device is directly hooked up to the Internet, then Shodan queries it for various publicly available information. The types of devices that are indexed can vary tremendously, ranging from small desktops up to nuclear power plants and everything in between. How is it different from Google? The most fundamental difference is that Shodan crawls the Internet, whereas Google crawls the World Wide Web. However, the devices powering the World Wide Web only make up a tiny fraction of what's actually connected to the Internet. Shodan's goal is to provide a complete picture of the Internet. You can use the search parameters displayed in the slide. Country. Use the country code you want to look for. For example, use GB for Great Britain, US for United States, etc. City. Filters the results according to the specified city. Geo searches in a given location. Hostname filters the results according to the host or domain name given. Net searches in given IP or subnet range. OS filters the results according to the operating system. Port searches for specific ports. Before, after filters the results according to the date. Show the results which are before or after the date given. As a plus, you can see the current Shodan scans on ics-radar.shodan.io. Let's try to find out the accessible Cisco device interfaces in Great Britain. In the search box, search for Cisco and last modified words. Use country. Search the parameters with the GB code. Now you can use the country code in double quotes. Otherwise, don't let any space occur between the country, parameter, and GB code. When you start the search, you'll see the results in a few seconds. Surf on the results. You will probably face the login pages of Cisco interfaces. You've already found something. You can perform, for example, a brute force attack on the login page. If you're luckier, you can find a Cisco Device Manager interface like the one seen on the slide. It's a good approach to look at the archives or backups of the systems. You'll probably find some valuable data in those archives. The Internet Archive is a San Francisco-based nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. It provides free public access to collections of digitized materials, including websites, software applications and games, music, movie, videos, moving images, and nearly 3 million public domain books. Web.archive.org is the archive of the website served by Internet Archive Library. Simply, write down the URL of the target website. You'll see a timetable. If you select a year from the timetable, you'll see the archive dates of the target website in details. On the slide, you see the date in which the target website is captured, there in green circles. Suppose that a sensitive data was published on the target website accidentally. A few days later, admins realized the mistake and removed the data from the website. But what if someone has already archived that website with the sensitive data? Select a year, click a date which is in the green circle. You'll see an old version of your target website. That's what the nhs.uk website looked like on the 1st of May 2010. Footprinting, also known as reconnaissance, is the technique used for gathering information about computer systems and the entities they belong to. To get this information, a hacker might use various tools and technologies. FOCA, Fingerprinting Organizations with Collected Archives, is a tool used mainly to find metadata and hidden information in the documents it scans. These documents may be on web pages and can be downloaded and analyzed with FOCA. It's capable of analyzing a wide variety of documents, with the most common being Microsoft Office, OpenOffice, or PDF files. These documents are searched for 3 possible search engines: Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo. Here's how you can download and install FOCA. You can download FOCA from the 11 Paths website that is seen on this slide. FOCA is open source. You can download all the sources as well as the executable binary from github.com/11paths/FOCA. However, this version requires SQL Server Express installed on the host machine. So I prefer to download and use the previous version of FOCA, which requires .NET Framework version 3.5 only. It's a portable version, so you don't need to install it. Download the zip file, extract it, go to the bin folder, and run foca.exec file. That's it. To work with FOCA, start a new project using Project button on the upper left corner. Give the project a name, enter the website, and choose the folder to save the results to. When you finish filling the fields, click the Create button to create a new project. After creating a new FOCA project, we can start a network scan. From the tree at the left side, select Network Node. Now select the search types. The search types listed on the panel are Web Search, you can choose whether Google or Bing, DN Search, Dictionary Search to perform DNS search using a dictionary, IP Bing to serve the domain names hosted on the same IP address, Shodan and RobTex queries, and click the Start button to start the scan. Now we can collect some documents published by the target domain to collect their metadata. From the tree at the left side, select Metadata node. You're supposed to see a panel similar to the one which is seen on the slide. Select the document types you want to collect, and click the Search All button to start the document search. You can see the documents found under Metadata node of the tree. You should download the documents to be able to extract the metadata. Right-click the documents you want to download from the menu. Select Download. Now you can extract the metadata of the downloaded documents. You can understand if a document is downloaded from the Download column of the table. Select the documents that you want to collect the metadata. Right-click and select Extract Metadata from the menu. You'll see the results under the Metadata node of the tree. Let's see FOCA in action. Find the 11 Paths FOCA website. On the website, you see a download button which brings you to the GitHub page of 11 Paths. You can find the latest release version of FOCA under FOCA Releases folder. It requires SQL Server Express installed on the host machine. Go back to the 11 Paths website. You can find a link to the previous version of FOCA. Read and accept the EULA and download the FOCA Pro.zip file. Extract the zip file. Go to bin folder and run foca.exec file. On the Project menu, select New Project to create a new project. Fill the boxes in carefully. And then click Create. Save the project file for further usages. Now we can start a new scan. Select the network node from the tree. Select the search types. On the dictionary search panel, you have to choose a valid dictionary. The default path is probably not valid. You can find a valid dictionary inside the DNS dictionary folder, which is under the bin folder where you found the foca.exec file. Click the Start button to start the scan and let the scan continue for a couple of minutes. Let's collect the documents from the target website and extract their metadata. Select the metadata node from the tree. Select the document types you're interested in. And click Search All button to find the documents. Let the search continue for a couple of minutes. Select the documents that you want to collect the metadata. Right-click and select Download. Select the downloaded documents, right-click, and select Extract Metadata at this time. Look at the nodes under the metadata node of the tree, and you will see the metadata extracted from other downloaded documents. You can examine the metadata of each document one by one, or you can find valuable data summarized under the Metadata Summary node. Usernames of the owners of the documents, operating system where the document is created, email addresses collected from the metadata of the documents, and more.